In talking about instrumental music, we need to begin with symphonies and sonata form. So as I mentioned, instrumental music is taking center stage in the classical era. And there are three main types of instrumental music that really come into being during the classical era. We've talked about these in the Baroque, but they really, reach, they really come into their own in the classical era. And those would be orchestral pieces, so the symphony and the concerto, chamber music, especially the string quartet, and pieces for instrument and keyboard, otherwise known as sonatas. Symphonies were written for full orchestra, and in the classical era, generally they were in four movements, and this was the form of the symphony, and most every composer adhered to this form in the classical era. So in movement one, there would be a slow introduction and then a fast section. And this is generally the longest movement. And the fast section of movement one what was in what we call sonata form. We'll talk about that in a moment. Once that movement ends, everyone takes a small pause, maybe about 30 seconds. Movement two was a slow movement in a different key, often the relative major or minor. And you can think of this as the aria movement, the emotional movement, the singing, the expression. Movement three was a faster movement, usually in triple meter, that resembled a dance, so a minuet, more often than not. And then finally, the last movement was the fastest movement. It was often a presto or vivace, and it was a rousing, relatively short piece to round out the symphony. Now, at this point, the orchestra has expanded. So this is generally generally what the orchestra would look like. You have your string section, doubles in the winds, some trumpets, some horns, and a timpani. It's getting larger. It's not that large at this point. It will expand in the future, but this is what your classical orchestra would more or less look like in the 1700s. And I'm going to let you listen to this on your own. I have four boxes, and I want you to guess which movement of the symphony you think it is based on the descriptions we were given in earlier slides. The excerpts that you are listening to are from Beethoven's First Symphony in C major, and you can watch the entire symphony below. It's relatively short. And then we have an example of a quote-unquote modern symphony by the band Muse, and I want you to think to yourself, does this adhere to the standards of a symphony or the form of a symphony? Why not? And would you consider it a symphony? Now, within the symphony, there is something that developed that is called Sonata Allegro form. Now, this is the form found in the first movement in about 95% of classical era symphonies. This is not to be confused with the sonata, which is a work for solo instrument and keyboard, which we'll talk about in a few modules. Sonata Allegro form consists of three main parts. The exposition, which introduces all the thematic ideas, generally an A theme and a B theme, and you can see that over here. After those are introduced, we have the development. So we take these thematic ideas from A and B, these two different melodies, so to speak, we put them in a blender, chop them up, and then barf them out onto the staff. The music is very, very unstable during this section. And at the very end, we have something called a recapitulation. So our original A and B themes are repeated. At the very end, the B theme being in the tonic key, so everything is rounded out. And again, this is an extremely common form of the classical era. This is another diagram that you can refer to. They use the term subject, which is left over from fugue in the Baroque. You can use subject, you can use theme, you can use melody. They are interchangeable. And I'll let you watch this video on your own. Same with this. This outlines Mozart's Symphony Number 4 in G minor, the first movement, which is a classic example of sonata form, and they will include commentary during the movement to help illustrate where the three main sections occur.